Would Joffrey have abused Margaery if they were married?
It was a matter of time. By the time Joffrey was betrothed to Margaery, he had already discovered that he had a taste for brutalizing and preying upon the weak, especially through Sansa. He may have let Margaery be for a while, but eventually he would have turned on her too. He was incredibly temperamental, and his pride easily wounded. One tiny mistake on her part could tip him over the edge. And then, of course, Loras the Kingsguard would have promptly lost his temper and hacked Joffrey in two, and we'd have another disaster on our hands. In the show, the Tyrells would have withdrawn all support from the Lannisters and gone home. Even Tywin noted that Joffrey was spiraling into even greater madness than Aerys. He requires a sharp lesson, he'd mused, and I'm curious as to what Tywin would have done to prevent such behavior from his grandson in future. Joffrey's violence towards Sansa went unpunished because she was isolated and terrified, with few protectors at hand. Margaery was not so unshielded, and keeping her safe was the only way for Tywin to keep the Lannister regime safe. They needed the Tyrells, and the Tyrells would not have stood by while their daughter was humiliated and tortured. Olenna murdered that kid for a reason. In time. Most likely. Joffrey had already started abusing people by the time he and Margaery met and were promised to each other. Sansa, for example, was an easy prey for him at the time, because she was the daughter of a traitor and as such didn't have many supporters that would protect her from his attacks. He enjoyed watching her suffer when he beat her. He enjoyed showing her the head of Ned Stark, her dad, on a spike. The Roose incident showed how far he was gone. He simply shot her because he felt like it. He enjoyed watching her fear, he enjoyed pretending he will let her live, he enjoyed killing her when she thought she is safe. Joffrey grew up with a cold and cruel grandfather like Tywin Lannister, an indifferent father like Robert Baratheon, a mother that was very busy with screwing her brother. The rest of the family was deeply enmeshed into palace intrigue. There was quite a lot of foreshadowing that a child born from incest, pampered yet ignored, a child whose family wasn't guiding him with affection and moral compass, could turn so, from the first series. Joffrey had a sadomasochistic trait, and he enjoyed watching and torturing people when he felt they were scared of him. Margaery, from what was written, did not give him this vibe. She projected to be more in awe of him, his wit and cleverness, and declared to find his brutality acts funny. She joined in his games. For him she was a companion in mischief, of sorts. Yes, he was fascinated by her womanly ways. Yes, she had Olenna by her side to instruct her on how to behave with such a crazy character and how to avoid getting his wrath directed at her. On how to get him to like her. This could have helped her for months, maybe years. Yes, she was from a family favored at court for their grains/wealth. Yes, all Tyrells tried to ingratiate themselves with the Lannisters, and this alliance was important to maintain the rule. But the signs were there already and, clearly, worrying the Tyrells, hence Olenna and Margaery questioning Sansa on the nature of the beast. They were all worried and whispers about his cruel acts were spreading. Joffrey would have found ways to satisfy his sadistic tendencies somewhere else, for a time, but any tiny spark could have turned his eye back on Margaery. Joffrey lost some of his inhibitions and fears of reprimand when he was crowned and started behaving even more erratic. He wasn't fearing Tywin as much as before. He could have started brutalizing Margaery even if Tywin didn't die, and both survived their respective murders. Tywin, once he was assured they have had a child so the lineage/claim to the throne can continue, wouldn't have cared much about Margaery's situation, as long as it was kept under wraps. Reasons Joffrey would have used to start abusing Margaery. Well, she was married before. And who knows what else she has done before she was my bride. She has tried to usurp my power. I think he accused Tyrion of this. Well, she was married with Renly, a traitorous schemer. Same traitor excuses he used for abusing Sansa, just it was Sansa's dad. Well, she isn't performing her duties, she must have a lover or two. X, Y, Z has seen her do this and that. Well, any excuse would have been accepted, because he was the king and she must be doing something wrong that he is so displeased. Cersei loved her children and feared Joffrey's brutality, but she would have found ways to excuse anything he did, because he was her son and the king. she would have used all the power they had to ensure the right lies spread. She would have concocted the lies herself if needed. We know she is good at that. Olenna wouldn't have been Olenna Tyrell if she wasn't already thinking of ways to grab the power through marriage and also get rid of Joffrey. Yep. First thing everyone should know about clinical narcissists like Joffrey is that they don't love anyone ever, period. The only person they ever care about is themselves. Joffrey is a textbook example of an abuser and possibly of a future serial killer too. He kills small and defenseless animals for fun, as seen in how he cut a pregnant cat open in front of poor Tommen to see the kittens, i.e. to get a power rush from killing something and traumatizing his brother, hence why Myrcella never let Tommen out of her sight from that moment on while she was in the same region as her brothers. He physically and emotionally abused his younger brother every single chance he could get away with it. He tried and failed to do the same with his sister but stopped and only confronted her when she stood up to him when he attempted to torment Tommen around her. In short, he started putting his future victims through the interview process to see who was weaker / in a lower position than him that he could get away with abusing them very young. This is a thing abusers do, hence why he tormented Tommen and Sansa, because his separate interviews with them showed that they were meek / of a lower social position than him. He outright kills people for fun and, being the king, he doesn't have to go on the prowl like regular serial killers do, since he can just summon nobodies and kill them like he did with those poor prostitutes. In short, no matter who good of a seductress and manipulator Margaery is, or is coached to be by Olenna, her head was inevitably going to head for the chopping block if her marriage with Joffrey sticks without the king oh so tragically dying. He might have momentarily seen Margaery as a partner in crime due to her passing his interview, and make no mistake, him killing the prostitutes in front of her and her encouraging it was an interview to see what her buttons were. If the marriage went on, he'd keep on interviewing her until he found something he could torment her with and put her in a position of weakness against him, or he'd grow bored and think, this whole partner thing is boring and silly and I don't want to share the power trip, and just attacks her. Because abusers like Joffrey always attack those that are in a lower social position than them and can't do anything about it. Since he's the king and there's no one that's higher than him in the official hierarchy, and what happens in a marriage is no one's business, not even if the wife gets brutally abused. Well, in short, the situation is tailor-made for whoever Joffrey's wife happened to become his victim, even if she so happened to have Mary Sue-like powers of seduction and persuasion to make everyone love her. Joffrey was an abuser. No amount of manipulation or sex baiting could make him care about anyone. Yes. But the question isn't whether it would have happened, but what the fallout and dynamics of the other important people would have been. If Tywin was around, there is no way he would have allowed a major alliance to fall apart like that. Loras was put in place to stop anything like that from happening, and it is likely he would have. I also get the feeling that Tywin wasn't so sad that Joffrey died and was happier with Tommen as a king who would listen to him and he could control. Did he suspect the Tyrells murdered Joffrey? Maybe. But more to the point, he didn't care. A huge issue for the Lannisters had gone. And when Joffrey started trying to abuse Margaery, there would have been problems. Especially if over half of the kingdom was still in open rebellion. Please don't take the easy sack of Highgarden and defeat of the Tyrells in Season 7 as true canon, fact, as it is ridiculous.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future also. Don't forget to like and subscribe to you never miss a video.